When people ask me, what's the hardest thing about being in a band? What's the hardest thing about touring and doing what we do? The answer is usually, well, I miss my family. It sucks leaving them. It sucks being in a tube on wheels for 4 or 6 weeks, whatever. I think nowadays, I'd have to say that one of the hardest things about touring is putting together the perfect lineup. Like having the right bands on the bill, because you want the show to be, you want the whole night to be solid when it comes to like the music, right? And there's a ton of bands that we know, and there's a ton of bands that we'd love to tour with, but so many bands now are booking so far ahead, and others are holding out for like a really big tour, something like with a bigger band. And it's hard for us we're in this weird position where we do well, we're big by some standard, right? Like we can go anywhere, put 200, 500, 700 people in a room, depending on the market. But we're not like this first top tier band. We're not the big letters on the festival poster yet. Sometimes you have to squint to see our band, but we do well. But there's a lot of bands that want to wait around, for one of those big letter bands to bring them on tour. And it happens. We got, screwed over a few times because we were waiting for those bands to call us. And you sort of get led on a little bit about like, oh yeah, you're on the short list. One thing I've learned about short list, if they tell you you're on a short list, you're probably not on any list at all. You're on the list of bands that they're not really thinking about. That's kind of what I've gathered. And so, we would wait, hold out. Yeah, they want you, they'd love to have you. And then when the time comes, we're going to go another way. And then they go with another band, and then you're left without a tour. And that happened to us a few times, a few summers in a row, when we were still coming up. And I just decided, probably like 5-6 years ago, that we weren't going to do that anymore. We were just going to headline our own shows. We've always headlined our own shows, but, we weren't going to pursue support as hard as we used to. A support slot is opening for a bigger band, and you do that so you can get in front of more people and hopefully grab some of their fans. And, and this whole genre that we're in is a shared space. Like there's fans. I see all these different bands' t-shirts in our crowds every night, and vice versa. I see Ballyhoo shirts at these, from videos or pictures of these band shows. There's always people representing our band, which is great. But as far as like, waiting for the call anymore, we just don't do that anymore. We've made a stand. We're just gonna keep doing our own thing and not wait around for anybody. We don't need your crowd. We don't need to do any of that, And oftentimes when you take the support slot, you're taking it for way less money than you would normally get paid. So there's that as well. That's always a factor, We're just not going to do that anymore. And because of that, we've seen a lot of growth, honestly. COVID messed everything up. Everything was on the rise, and then it just crashed. But since 2021 fall, we started, building back up again. And we've really seen the growth over the last year or two. Part of that is going out with excitable, fun bands that add to the show. When you put together a support bill, it's a tiered system where we'll be at the top, and then there's a band that's like doing a little less numbers than we are to justify them playing before us. And then you get a band that's like on the come up, is excited, fresh, fun, and then you put them as first of three. Sometimes you can do 4 bands on the bill, but I like to do 3 bands. I feel like it's a nice, well-rounded night, and the night doesn't go on too long. You can do doors at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and the show's over by 11, which is great. I would love personally to have shows be over by like 10 every night. That'd be so sick. Putting together that lineup is one of the hardest things about touring now. It's like, because of what I said earlier, they're either booking way far out and they're already busy, or they're holding out. They say, we want to do it, but we're waiting for this call, we're waiting for that call. And I understand that 100%. I totally get that, because as I said, we used to do that too. But I've also seen bands lose the tour like we did. They didn't get picked to do the tour because like they thought they were sort of led on. That bigger band went with somebody else, and then now they don't have a tour. They're not touring because they wanted to wait, and that's a gamble that you take, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you just have to learn that. So for us, we're going to just headline, we're going to do the thing and grow our own numbers. I got tired of helping other bands build up their numbers, because that's really what you're doing as a support act, if I'm being honest. It's like you're helping that band. At the end of the day, it's a Ballyhoo show, and those ticket sales are ours, But, that's if you want to get down to like the technicalities of it, right? But at the end of the day, you do want a fun show. You do want like dope bands that people are into, and it just makes for a better run, And we've done runs with bands that are sort of lesser known, maybe outside of the main genre that we're in. And the show does well, but not as good as it could have if we had included the bands that that these other fans of ours are wearing their T-shirts. You want to give the fans a good, it really is for the fan experience. You want to give them the best fun night ever, and with bands that they know or at least familiar with, or if you can find a really exciting band that's great live, has cool songs, is fun to watch, that's cool too. Even if you don't know the songs, you're not singing along, but you're like enjoying the experience. Like, this band is putting on a fun show, and we try to be that band too when we go to open for people. But we just don't really care to do the support slots anymore, and we will at some point. We always we're always open to the conversation. I always say, have the conversation, be open to it, but at the end of the day, it's like you have to do what's best for your band. So, so I'd say if you're gonna put a tour together, you got to think way far ahead. Like, we're already, it's now May the 4th be with you guys, by the way. It's May 4th, 2025, and we're looking at February, March, April of 26 already. So you have to think far ahead and try to get bands involved. And sometimes it can't be through the agents or the managers. And maybe you don't have an agent or a manager, but artist to artist is always sort of the best thing, because you can, then the artist will go back and say, hey, to the agent, like, hey, we want to tour with this band, So get homied up with other bands, bro down, as they say, and make friends. And hopefully you can put yourself together a nice tour. I saw bands back in the day, like, they would load up a tour with support. They would put like 6 bands on the bill, and logistically that is a effing nightmare that I don't really want to deal with. I guess at the end of the day, I wouldn't have to deal with it. I keep saying end of the day. I'm going to stop saying that. A lot of people say that. I guess my crew has to deal with that, so I don't have to deal with that. But 6 bands, it seems like a lot, but they would pack out these giant rooms because there's so many bands that people are into. And then when everything's said and done, you see how I did that instead of the end of the day. When everything's said and done, the headliner band, that's their show, and those are their ticket sales. They sold 1,000 tickets. They sold 1,500 tickets. Not everybody else, That's just part of the game, And that's not to slight new, younger bands or support bands at all, because we've definitely been the support band many times. We've helped elevate another band, and you should do that. You should do that in the beginning and along the way. But as you grow and you get bigger, you have to realize your value, your worth, and you got to say, all right, well, no, we're not going to do that, because we we can sell out this room on our own. Why are we going to help another band sell this room out? You know, these are what we call the politics of it. And it can get a little weird and dirty sometimes, but you try not to have it that way. But it's especially weird when you have like bands that you're friends with, like you're really good friends with, and you're both doing really well and you want to combine forces. Then you talk about a co-headliner, right? If you have like similar numbers and the excitement, the momentum, the talk around the band is big, around the bands are big. So like you talk about a co-headliner, and that's what we did last year with Bumpin' Uglies, where, you know, we just tried to keep it fair and we just split everything. And there was we tried to keep like as less politics as possible, and just make it split right down the middle, even down to the merch, like the tour merch, like the shirt and the poster. We were both selling them, and we just split the money no matter who sold what. Some people might buy more at the other table than our table, or vice versa. That doesn't mean, you know, but we're all here for the same reason. We brought all these people out, so we're just splitting the money, you know. That's just the best way to do it, in my opinion, the easiest way, and without making it weird. And then you just go out there and you rip it and you have a good time. And, you know, we realized that everybody was there for all of us, you know. Of course, like, they had their fans, we had ours, but we also share fans. It was just a great experience for the fans, I think, you know. And it was really great, and it was very, you know, lucrative for us, for both bands, you know. And then we bring out a smaller band that's on the come up to open the show. And, you know, you just have a great night, and you just try to avoid all the fucking politics. But yeah, putting the perfect bill together is hard to do, but it's important. We can tell the importance because everyone does it. You know, everyone's always trying to put the best show together. I think the fans have a way better time because of that. And then we can go home, you know, we made a little money. You know, nobody's rich off this stuff. We just want to make some money. We want to make profit so we can pay our bills and justify us being out there, you know. If you come home with $1,000, obviously that's great. You know, you made money, but I was just out for a month away from my family and away from other things that I could be making money on to pay the bills, you know. So that's the gamble of being in a band and all the politics of it. And put together the right bill, make it good, keep your ear to the ground. Who are people listening to? What bands are doing well and making their own noise? That's what you want to do. You know, do your best to get it all together way ahead of time. And, you know, there's the budget too. I forgot to mention the budget is important. And, you know, there's bands that even if you do book far out, it's like there's certain bands that want a certain amount of money and we just can't pay that. You know, it's like we want the band, but then the deal that we get is just not, we just can't make it work. And it's no hard feelings at all. It's just, that's what they want. We can't pay it. It's all good, you know. And we've asked for money that it's like, that's too high, you know. And sometimes you look at it like, all right, is it worth taking a pay cut to go do this show, this tour, and you know, hopefully do really well in merch and pick up some new fans along the way? Those are all things you have to consider. God, I could talk about this stuff all day. Being in a band is like one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, and I've spent my entire life doing it, and it has many, 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 many pitfalls and dark times, but the good times, the positive stuff really cancels that out in a way, you know. I think you learn from those dark times, those old mistakes, and you have a really, really good time when it's good, and it just really, I don't know, just builds you up. It takes a certain type of person to handle this stuff. But yeah, I think putting together the right bill is important. It's really hard. So yeah, that's my thoughts on going on tour with other bands. All right, I got to get to the airport.